Here we go. Hello, hello, and welcome to the Rock Metal Podcast. I am your host, John Harris, and today on Rock Metal Podcast, we have DOHNY JEP. They have a new EP called No More Love, which is going to be released via Favor the Brave Records. Right now I'm being joined by Pete, Rowan, and Stuart to share some more information about this stellar release, as well as what the gang has got going on. I'm going to dial it up, because the floor is like lava, baby. So, boys, welcome to the show.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned in the pre-roll, thanks for continuing to work and write music, and not just that, but good music, because I know two of those things are really difficult. Actually, that's a good question. Which one is most difficult? Sitting down to write the music and actually release it and have it be consistent? Or is it, I don't know, the dialing in, how do you refer to it? Like your own brand? Or do we know it sounds like DOHNY JEP? Which one is more difficult?
We sort of write so many songs that you know when you like throw mud at the wall and you hope something sticks. It's not quite like that, but we do write so many songs. I think like the combination of us three will sound like DOHNY JEP. So I'm not entirely sure if it's that hard to sound like us from us, because that's just what we do. But yeah, we do write a hell of a lot of songs, and not all of them make the cut, so to speak, which I know a lot of bands do, but that's sort of our vetting process for what we like to think is good music. Is we write a lot and then pick the best ones of the ones that we've written.
Mm-hmm. I think we're all quite brutal as well. Like we're all sort of musical backgrounds, so we're quite brutal with everything that gets put out.
You got to favor the brave. And if the song is not brave, then it's got to
only favor the brave ones. Yeah.
Yeah. So then it's got to go. And you're like, I'm sorry. You're just a little. You're not brave. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You just drag it to the recycling bin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Keep it there maybe a little longer before doing the right click and delete permanently.
Well, actually, I've not deleted anything. We have some very questionable demos, let's put it that way.
Uh-oh. What is it that went into this EP then? Like, how many songs went through the process before you settled on this EP?
Well, all of this year's 4 EPs were sort of, they weren't written at the same time, but they weren't necessarily written and then clustered into the 4 EPs as you've heard them. Mm-hmm. So you referenced Floor Like Lava earlier. That one was written early on, and we kind of cut 2 songs together to make that song. That was shortly after, I think, our first album that some of that song was written. But we decided to kind of tactically with this year start off a little bit lighter with our first EP, and then sort of progress into the heavier side things later on. So yeah, we sort of wrote a bunch of these songs at the same time, and we sort of categorized them based on how we wanted to portray the music and our brand to an audience, which is why, like I say, we started light and then got heavier towards the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. So the mud was not so thick, and then it just got... It was heavy, and then it was a mud wall.
Well, we had more than 16 songs for this year. And we were talking about maybe putting one song out a month, or, there was so many different plans. But yeah, basically we had written a bunch of songs, way more than we've put out, maybe close to 30, 40, maybe even 50 songs. And these are the ones that sort of made the cut. And I guess it worked out to be 16 because it means we could have 4 per EP. So we just put a little bit more effort in, but yeah, we really kind of tweaked and defined and refined what we wanted to sound like, and hopefully that's come across this year.
Yeah. So you guys did all the work, you front loaded it, you'd made your decision, and then you just hit go. So what have you been doing the whole year that this machine's just been running for you?
Writing the next lot. We have written a lot of songs that are for the next release, whatever the next release may be. We're still not entirely sure what we're going to do with the next release. It could be one EP, it could be an album, it could be a series of EPs. We have no real plan yet. We normally get a chunk of songs and then work out the plan later on and pretend that it was the plan the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just love songwriting, so we just write and obviously generally if you write and write you tend to get better. So that's sort of hopefully what it will seem like, when our next stuff comes out. Fingers crossed. Mm-hmm. Not that we get worse.
Yeah, you mentioned the writing getting better and better and better. Is that individually? Is that cohesively as a unit?
I mean, I'd say a bit of both, to be honest. Because it was at the beginning of the year, I wasn't writing demos on my own, but now I do write demos on my own. So it brings a different kind of flavour to the new stuff that we are writing, because you've got one person who's started this whole idea and then goes, what about this? Rather than everyone going in at the same time.
Mm-hmm. I also think that we sort of are slowly getting to what the band sounds like. Like the first album that Pete and I did before Rowan came on board has elements of what we sound like this year, and elements of what we're going to sound like. But it was sort of like testing the waters about what we wanted to do and what we wanted to sound like. This year we've sort of progressed that, and we kind of go, right, this is the niche that we're fitting in. And then now I think we're slowly getting a bit closer to what our sound would be. So it's getting easier and it's getting harder in the same breath. It's like it's getting easier because we kind of go, all right, this is what we want, but it's getting harder because it's like, well, how do we achieve that consistently?
Mm-hmm. I'm just immediately reminded of I saw a segment with Armin van Buuren, and he already knows what he's going to do because he's just got it down. He just brings up his template and he just fills in the template and then sends it off. And then, and obviously as an artist, I don't know how comfortable you guys are with being that automated, but some stuff honestly just is to a degree.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Go on.
I was going to say some of our songs do line up nicely, and we can write a song in hours if the flow is right. But then there are some songs which have taken, I don't know, weeks to get right. Or as Stu said with Floor Like Lava, it was two different ideas that were kind of merged together. So each song has a different flow to it. Some go very, very well and very quickly, and some are a bit of a pain.
Mm-hmm. Floor Like Lava, two different ideas that came together. Was it difficult? I dare to use the word Frankenstein, but obviously the song chose life. There was a lot of pressure to dial it up. So what was it like?
I love these
puns.
It would have said there's no more love otherwise. So how did you guys bring these two songs together? Why bring the two songs together? How did that even happen? Or two ideas, rather, I guess I should say.
The original song was the end riff of a song from our previous EP called I'm Bored, which was the opening riff, the original opening riff to Floor Like Lava. But as we kind of wrote it and rewrote it vocally so many times, there must be at least, I don't know, 10, 15 demo versions of it, of us trying to get it right. And it just, for some reason, just didn't really click with Pete and I when we were doing it. And we were like, well, clearly this isn't working in the way we're doing it. Let's work out what we want this song to kind of be, cut it up and start again vocally. And then it came a little bit more organically. At the time, Wayne was in the band as well. And I basically just actually, no, this was before Wayne joined the band. This is how Wayne joined the band. I texted him going, Wayne, I'm having trouble with this riff. Can you help me out? I was like, I know what I want it to sound like. And I gave him like reference riffs or tracks. I was like, I want it to vaguely be in this kind of bracket. Like, here's the tempo, here's the key. Come up with a riff. Surprise me. You know, a day later, he sent me the bridge riff of Floor Like Lava and also the intro, the riff to it now. And I was like, well, yeah, there it is. I didn't even give him notes. I was just like, yeah, that's it. Like, took the riffs, put them in the project, wrote the rest of the song around it with the bits that we had left, and it sort of came together really nicely. And then went back to the previous EP, because obviously we were writing all this roughly at the same time, and took the old riff and just stuck it on the end of another song. And both of them are, you know, two of my favorite songs.
Mm-hmm. Why is that? Because of the riff? Because it brought Wayne in?
Well, yeah, I mean, Wayne's a massive factor. I don't know, they just sort of work for me. It's really hard to explain why I like them. I mean, I'm Bored especially is probably one of my favourite ones. They just kind of, when I listen to it, even when we play it live or when we were writing it, it's just something about it kind of clicked with me, and I was like, this is what I wanted. You know, this is what I wanted it to sound like. We've achieved what I've wanted to sound like. Because sometimes you have an idea in mind and you can't quite get it to what you want. But with those two, it sort of like unlocked itself, and we were like, well, there it is, you know?
Mm-hmm. Broke the chains, guys. We have achieved success. It's like that scene from V for Vendetta when he comes out and he's in like the acid rain or whatever. And yeah.
Have you watched that recently?
Last year, I told myself, you know, November 5th is coming up, I should watch it. But I already watched it last year, and I don't know, it's a good movie, but I don't think it's something I want to watch every year. And I don't know, do you guys watch it every year?
No, it's only recently come on English Netflix, which is why I asked.
Oh, okay.
Or is it Netflix or Amazon? I can't remember. I've seen it recently, that's why.
Yeah. Remember, the 5th of November.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So I remember correctly, that happened in England, right? That whole thing?
Yeah. Yeah, the gunpowder plot.
Yes. Fantastic. Back to this juicy riff, though. I was just giving Floor Like Lava a listen, and I think part of the cool thing about this riff is that like an octave thing going on to back up the riff?
In the bridge riff, you mean?
Maybe. I'm hearing something in the intro, actually.
I mean, a lot of our riffs have got a sub-octave element. We use a lot of octave stuff live. So maybe in the guitarist and Pete the bassist, we have, like a normal octave pedal. For people who don't know what an octave pedal is, it sort of just literally puts an octave of what you're playing underneath, and it kind of thickens it up. It's really useful for when you're a three-piece band and you're trying to have a little bit more of an impact when sections come in. So both Pete and I use some octaves when that happens, and obviously because that's on the track, we try and emulate that live. Okay.
And you do that with a pedal?
Yeah.
Okay. Same pedal in the studio, or do you do it differently in the studio but use the pedal because you don't have the studio with you?
In the studio, we normally quad track all the guitars anyway, so we do 4 tracks of all the guitars and an octave below as well.
That's like 6 tracks of guitar.
I know.
You guys need another 2 tracks.
We do. And then our producer sort of just blends them together and makes it sound like I did it all in one go.
Of course. My only other recommendation, unless you're already doing it, is neck pickup fuzz pedal.
I don't use that much fuzz, actually.
Okay.
But I definitely will now. You've said it. I need to buy a fuzz pedal.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, either that or... Because the death metal way is like a metal zone, so you get some chainsaw in there. And then the metalcore doom metal thing is a fuzz pedal, usually on a neck pickup, I've heard.
Yeah, it does muddy it up a bit, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, baby. With the quad tracking, though, is it like 2 different guitars, 2 different amps? What's happening with the quad tracking?
It's usually 4 different amps. I record with a Kemper, so I'm not like live tracking a cab in a room. But yeah, I normally use 4 different amp sounds. I always use my Telecaster, so the guitar doesn't change, but it's 4 different amp sounds, and then they're just panned differently to kind of give that huge sound that only usually applies in like choruses and riffs.
Yeah.
in the verses, it's usually, if it's like a quieter verse, it'll be 1 or 2 tracks that are usually the same thing, and then one's kind of affected differently with, you know, more reverb or delay to kind of fill the extra gaps.
I was going to say that huge sound that only Stuart can get.
Exactly, and Pete being the bassist. I mean, Pete's almost, he's more to blame because he looks after most of the lower registers, which makes things sound heavier anyway.
Well, that brings another interesting thing. Pete, do you do anything bass-wise? Because if he's down an octave as well, how do you come in? What do you do? Do you have an octave effect as well, or you can only feel it?
Yeah, I do. The octave stuff is only really used for riffs and, you know, bridges and stuff like that. But the 100% of the time, I've always got a type of overdriven sound on my bass. I never have a clean sound. So there's always a dirty tone with what I have for bass. And then it just gets a bit heavier in the chorus, and then stupidly heavy for the riffs.
For the gear nerds out there, are you doing like a dark glass, or what kind of a setup do you have?
I did have a dark glass. I used the Alpha Omega Ultra, I think that's what it's called. But I switched to the Line 6 HX Stomp because it's got very similar sounds to the dark glass, plus an absolute ton more. So yeah, and we use that to record with as well. So what I record with in the studio, I have on stage.
Yeah, I'm gonna say you can. There's the plugin as well, the Helix native plugin. So you could.
Yeah.
You're connected now. You've become one. You're like meta.
That's it. Yeah.
Absorbed into the system. Fantastic. Cool. A Telecaster. I'm actually curious to hear more about that. Is it like the stock single coils? Did you change them out for something else?
No, it's a Tokai Telecaster. It's not even a Fender or any other brand of Telecaster. I'm a huge fan of Tokai guitars, which, if you're not familiar with, are a Japanese brand who, in the early to mid 80s, effectively stole the plans. Don't quote me on this. I don't want people like bitching about me in the comments. Maybe not stole. They adopted.
So did Ibanez in the 80s. It was a crazy thing.
Yeah. They basically were making really high quality guitars with the same spec as like Fender and Gibson, but obviously without the name, so they didn't carry the hefty price tag. However, now if you were to buy a Tokai from the 80s, it probably would have a hefty price tag on it. My one is not from the 80s, but it still carries the high level of quality. So single coils, basically I bought it on a whim when I was in a guitar shop once, and I almost have never put it down. The only thing I've done to it is had the electrics redone, because they got a bit dodgy because of the amount I was playing it. You know, you get like gritty pots, and your jack cable doesn't, you know, it makes noises. So yeah, I've only just done some
I'm
some
learning
maintenance on it.
Learning new things about you, Stuart.
Yeah. I'm not shy about my jack cables.
But on that note, if you're a guitar player and you haven't taken your guitar in for regular servicing, please do.
Definitely do it. There's nothing more embarrassing than a noisy jack on stage.
Dirty pots.
Dirty pots. That's right.
Dirty pots.
Yeah, like a couple of years ago, I remember I was interning at a recording studio here in town, and there was a band that was in, and having to explain to a guitar player that their guitar sucks. It's, you know, they're like, man, this is my tone. I'm like, let's go clean that thing out, change the strings, maybe get you new pickups while we're at it. Like, the dirt and the squeak are not attractive.
Yeah, tone's subjective, but sometimes it's just bad.
There's a guitar shop in Vancouver called West Coast Guitars Vancouver. In case you didn't know Vancouver was on the West Coast, they've made sure that you know. West Coast Guitars Vancouver, and they're selling the brand you're talking about. I'm taking a look at some of their very real looking Fender Telecaster type guitars, but they look cool. I dig it. I like it.
Yeah, Good. Me too.
Mm-hmm. Sweet. Groovy. So we chatted about this EP, No More Love. We chatted about... Actually, you know what we didn't chat about? We got a couple of minutes left. Let's chat about Favor the Brave Records. Is that a new thing? I just recently chatted with... And I have to find their name, but apparently they're working with the guy who started that label, and so they're on that label too, and whatever else. I have to find his name. But anyway, take us through, how did you guys get with them? Is that new?
This whole year we've been with Favour the Brave. So all of the 4 EPs have been released through Favour the Brave. They found us, correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, from our last album.
That's correct, yeah. Through Hard Rock Hell Radio, is that the one?
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Yeah.
So the owner of the label is a DJ on HRH, which is like a heavy metal rock radio station. And he heard our first album somehow. I'm not entirely sure how. And we kind of, did some back and forth calls with him. And he was saying, I'm going to set up a record label if you're interested. But obviously, this was like as our last album came out, so it was a little bit too late. But we approached him with some new material, and he was really happy to kind of put it out. So, yeah, they're a Brighton-based label, so an indie label, relatively small, but doing very well.
I'm finding it right now. George Donahue?
That's it.
That's correct, yeah.
That's the guy.
Beautiful. I had May on recently.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Rex. Yeah.
Yeah, to chat about Rex.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And then when I saw you guys, I don't know, maybe I hadn't seen it before, maybe I did see it before, but when Jade sent off the stuff and I saw that it was through Favor the Brave, I just immediately made that electrical connection in my head.
Yeah. Well, I mean, George is in Rex as well, along with May.
That's what she was saying. It was just her for the interview, but that's what she was saying. And that's some good stuff, too. So,
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Very cool. And then there's a music video for Dial Up, so I'm going to have that in the show notes. I'll have the website, DOHNYJEP.co.uk, in the show notes.
That's the one.
Yeah. And then I'll be in touch with you guys and Jade in the next couple of weeks, as per usual, when this episode is going to air on YouTube. We chat about octave pedals, Tokai guitars. What else do we chat about?
Wayne. We chatted about Wayne.
Chatted about Wayne.
Riffs.
Songs. Yeah, riffs.
Yeah, quad-tracked riffs. Have you ever come across a riff that just sounds worse quad-tracked and you only back down and do it double-tracked, or am I speaking blasphemy and that's never happened?
I have personally never encountered this. Everything sounds better quad-tracked. I would literally quad-track everything if I could.
Apart from the drums.
Well, no, including the drums. 3 of those tracks would get deleted, but I would still give it a go.
I imagine with the layers of compression and parallel compression on drums, you could probably argue that at some point they arguably probably are something similar to.
Probably,
yeah. You're right. But it's worth a try, isn't it?
It sure is. Boom. Sweet. Octave pedals, quad-tracked riffs, Tokai guitars, Dial Up the music video, the track Floor Like Lava, EP No More Love, Favor the Brave Records, DOHNY JEP. Sweet. Well, guys, I think we covered everything.
Yeah, well, good job. Good job, guys.
Yeah. Team effort. Well, boys, thank you so much for coming back on to the Rock Metal Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
No worries. Thank you.